Hey everyone, welcome to CatchyCartoons. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw a stylish, cool girl, which is kind of ironic coming from this not so stylish and seriously uncool girl. But let's have a go anyway, shall we? Ready? We'll begin the rough drawing by blocking in some simple shapes, starting with a circle. Well, sort of a circle for her head. She's going to be tilting her head, so we'll draw the eye line and the center line at an angle and sketch in her neck at the same angle. Another sort of circle for her chest, about half the size of the head. And then rough in her body using a simple U shape, but hiked up just a little on the screen right side and drawn at a very slightly opposing angle to her head and neck. You'll see what I mean by this when I add the center line. Now let's sketch in her shoulders at the same angle as the eye line, as we're really going for an interesting pose here. I want her to be leaning screen right, so I'll angle her leg inwards and down from that hiked up hip. Now you know why we did that. And for some playfulness, why don't we make her a little pigeon-toed by drawing a right angle for her foot? This foot should be situated under her chin so that she's balanced, and I'll talk more about balance later on in the video. We'll push the pose and the cute factor even more by making her a tiny bit knock-kneed, by angling the line up to her knee and then straight up to her body. Let's angle her other leg out to the knee, a subtle arc to indicate the calf muscle, and then down to the foot. Again, draw the toes inwards as we block in another triangle. We'll finish this leg by taking the line back up to the hip. We're going to tuck her upper arm against her body, and since she is so cool, she's going to ooze some attitude by pointing a carefree finger off to the side. So angle the forearm up at about the same angle as her head. Sketch in the thumb, and the pointing index finger should be parallel to the ground. Draw the elbow, and we'll finish the forearm, taking note on how it is thicker at the elbow than at the wrist. We'll finish the hand with a simple mitten shape for the folded-in fingers. For her screen right arm, we'll take the line straight down to the wrist, but keep an eye on your proportions, making sure it's neither too short nor too long. No orangutan arms here, please. Another simple mitten shape for the hand and back up to finish. Let's give our girl big eyes and irises. High open eyebrows, a tiny nose, a crooked little smile, and of course she needs ears, so we'll add those by placing them at the eye line. We'll give her a big brimmed hat, atop lots of long hair that flows down her back, and at the front a long wavy lock of hair that falls over her eye and across her shoulder. And we'll finish the ruff with a shorter wavy lock of hair at the other side of the head. Now we can move on to the tie-down stage, where we'll bring this girl to life as we nail down our shapes and forms, adding more detail, her clothing, and just do a little overall finessing. We'll start by tying down the eyes. The line should be thicker along the tops of the eyes to indicate the upper lids. Let's thicken up the brows, draw the bridge of the nose along the center line, making the tip a bit smaller, and sketch in her lips. Loosely tie down her head, and even though the top of her head will be hidden by her hair, I'm still going to lay down this line, as it will help me understand the ellipse of her hat so that it sits on her head properly. This is just another example of the importance of drawing through elements to ensure accuracy in your work. Let's make her cheek a touch wider, then I think we'll adjust the ellipse just a little so the hat will sit higher and allow us to see more of her head. Let's knock in her ears, loosely tie down the hat brim, and make the crown a touch smaller and flatter. Let's stay really loose now as we tie down the locks of hair, as this will suggest the bounciness of those curls. We don't want it to look as though it's been hairsprayed to death. We'll thin out the main body of her hair, then loosely rough in some strands of hair in the front, as this will also help to suggest movement. Since this girl is wearing a baggy, oversized top, we'll draw the collar slightly off her shoulder. Billow out the sleeve, then, as we start to finesse the hand, draw the fingers within the mitten shape, and sketch in the cuff to finish. We'll add some form to the body now, by taking the line straight down from the shoulder, a quick turn in at the bottom of her rib cage, and take the line down in a gentle arc, finishing with a little jaunt out by her hip. Since this top is oversized, the bottom is actually overhanging the hem, so we'll angle the line down to the center point, a gentle arc back up the other side, and then take the line up to the shoulder, but drawing it just outside of the ruff as the top is wider than her body. Let's make the shoulder a bit wider. Sketch in a thick fold of fabric at the elbow where it bends. Draw in the rest of the sleeve, but with more bulk under the arm as the heavy fabric is hanging down. And then the cuff. But before we move on to her hand, take note on how I've drawn the cuff. I've added a subtle curve where it joins the sleeve and a straight line by the wrist. By having these two lines at different angles, it creates a contrasting form, which makes for an interesting shape. It seems such a tiny thing, doesn't it? But these small, subtle details really do add up to make your drawing sing. And now back to her hand. I am really liking these shapes, so we'll just darken the line and indicate the remaining fingers within the mitten. Let's draw the hem of her top and add a couple of folds near the bottom to suggest the weight of the sagging material. We'll just add a silly, frilly armband as a fun little detail and a place where we can play with some colour later. Now, let's lose this way too straight outer leg by creating a more natural shape at the knee, and then just thicken her ankle a touch as we start on her shoe. Round off the toe and draw the tongue of the shoe. We'll make the rolled up cuffs of her pants fairly long, being sure to wrap the line around her leg to add some dimension, and a little C shape to indicate her knee. As to the other leg, why, it's looking a bit odd by the inner knee, so let's just take the line straight down instead. We'll make the other shoe slightly bigger, add some detail, and the tongue. Let's give the outside of this leg a subtle curve for some form. Draw in the cuff, again wrapping it around the leg, and then another little C shape for the knee. This completes the first tie-down stage and is the perfect place to take a little break. So, how are we doing? I realize that this is a bit of a tough one, so take a step back and have a good long look at your drawing. Especially check your posing and proportions, the facial expression and details in the clothes. Happy? If not, take the time now to make any adjustments before we get too far along in the process. And if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. And how about subscribing too? Now that would be cool. As we move on to the second tie-down stage, we'll add a little polish and commit to our drawing with a darker line. Go carefully through the eyes since we want them to be just right. Even though her hair hangs over her eye, you'll see that I've drawn the eye right through the hair because I want to maintain the correct shape of the eye. You can quickly find your drawing going a little wonky if you try to cheat by not completing elements even if they are partially hidden. I've even drawn the eyebrows, and one of them won't be seen at all in the end. Let's nail down the nose and the mouth, clarify her lips, widen the head a touch, again drawing through the hair to maintain its shape. Let's make sure her hat is sitting on her head correctly and just shave a touch off the crown. We'll darken up the hair, especially the two locks, as they are quite messy indeed, perhaps in need of some hairspray after all. Now remember, during the rough stage we touched on the issue of balance. Let's dig a little deeper into that now while I continue to darken up the line. It's very important that your character doesn't look like they're falling over, unless that's the intent of your drawing, of course. To make sure that your character is balanced, it's pretty straightforward. Generally speaking, keep the head between the feet. Never take the head beyond a foot. For example, if a character is standing straight up with the weight distributed evenly between both feet, then you want the head in the middle of the feet. As you place more weight on one foot, let's say the screen right foot, as we see in this drawing, the more the head should move towards screen right. If our girl was to straighten her head, you would see that it would sit mostly over that foot. If all of the weight is on the screen right foot, however, if she was standing on one leg, for instance, then the head would be directly over that foot. And if your character has an impossibly wide head, such as this girl, the center of the head should be directly over the top of the foot. Keeping these simple rules in mind allows you to create interesting and more complicated poses like this one, rather than being limited to the more boring, front-on, straight up and down, rigid poses. Okay, it looks like we've got some nice things happening with her legs. So let's take special care as we define the shape, arcing the line inwards through the outside of her knee. Darken the shoe and thin out the cuff a touch. And again, take care with her screen left leg. We don't want to lose that nice anatomy we've created. We'll commit to the cuff and then finish this tie-down stage by adding some tone. This just helps us to differentiate elements, making things clearer when we get to the cleanup and color stages. A fairly dark tone for the eyes, through the hair, bits of her top, and the armband. We'll use a lighter tone for the pants and then move on to the cleanup stage. Here we'll apply our clean and final line. We'll start the cleanup with the screen right eye, making the line thicker on the top to indicate the lid, but use a thinner line for the irises and highlights of both eyes. But before we can complete the other eye, we'll have to clean up this lock of hair, as it will dictate where the eye will start and stop, again indicating the upper lid with a thicker line. As you can see, I'm applying a thinner, lighter line than the usual traditional clean-up line. The reason? None really, although I do feel a heavier line might just weigh down this lively-looking girl. Sometimes I just like to experiment with different types of line work. You should too. But as usual, be sure to still taper this thinner line with some nice thicks and thins to keep the line alive, as we don't want the dreaded bent wire line. Go carefully through the nose and mouth, especially the mouth. Maintain that smile. A thicker line for the face and ears, as we do want the exterior line work to be thicker. We'll make a slight adjustment to the brim of her hat on the left side. Never feel that you can't still tweak your drawing, even at this late stage. The line work for her top should be fairly thick. This will give the impression that the material is heavy, and will taper the line to a thin at the elbow, bottom of the top, and through the folds, to illustrate that the fabric is being stretched due to its weight. Let's be careful through the legs. We don't want to ruin that nice bit of anatomy. In fact, I'm going to push the anatomy by adding a bit more curve to the outer thigh of the screen left leg. You see, another late tweak. Take some care with the cuff, clean up the shoe, and knock in the knees. Let's thin out this ankle so it matches the other one. Tidy up the shoe and make the tongue a bit bigger. And now we're finally ready for the color stage. I'm going to give this cool girl a teal-based monochromatic outfit. But there are no rules when it comes to color for this drawing. Have fun with your choices by picking any combination of colors you like. I'm going to apply a darker tone of teal for her pants, and to ground her, an even darker tone for her shoes. To break things up, a lighter tone for the toes and the cuffs. And for a little pop, we'll accent her outfit with a dull magenta for the socks and that frilly armband. Top it all off with a peachy-coloured hat. A rich red wine colour for her hair, except for that long lock at the front, which I just know this girl would have dyed another colour. So why not purple? And hey, what do you know? You've just drawn one pretty cool girl. How awesome is that? For more drawing fun, have a look at this. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.